quote this on me. There is no way the Orioles or Red Sox make the playoffs this season. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
For me, I gotta build a snowman.
I don't think all Mavs fans look into the stats like I do.
I'm mixing names, swapping pitchers' names, and everyone today. So thanks for catching me.
I've given up on Drew Lock. I think you trade him.
I set the bar really low at the NBA predictions.
How are we talking about the Thunder in a MLB preview? I have no idea.
That's a perfect name. What you said, name brand players. Like, it's not the great value Target brand toilet paper or whatever. It's the Charmin Ultra Strong.
I don't know if Nick Nurse is the coach for the Raptors. I don't know if he's the reason why they won the 2019 championship. I feel like that was more of a team effort. Yeah, this questions the firing of Dwayne Casey, who I think is a very underrated coach. He's making the best of the Detroit Pistons situation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was surprised that the Clippers gave up Lou Williams.
Everything's going wrong for the Lakers at the wrong time.
The Mavs cannot say we do not miss Seth Curry shooting threes.
Them losing like 40 players to the Chargers who play online.
I'm just gonna, and it lands to the Dolphins. I'm just gonna have to throw my hands into the air.
I agree 100%, and the reason why I agree is because this is a terrible trade for the long term.
To me, the Capitals really pushed all their chips for this season. So happy belated birthday to Madison Bowie.
Sam Bennett's someone I really expected to be a better player.
Hello, I'm Mike Grimes, and you've been listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our 54th episode. Make sure to check out our last episode where we did an NFL draft spotty review. And today, also make sure to check out our last interview, which was with Jeff Allen, who was an NFL guard for the Chiefs and the Texans, and also is an owner of Cookie Society. Now, today, for our 54th episode, we will be doing our first ever MLB Power Rankings. And Austin, I'll let you announce number 30.
Yeah, so this should be expected. Heading into the season, we definitely anticipated this team to be pretty bad. And it's proved to be that way through the start of the season. And at number 30, we have the Colorado Rockies. What do you think? What have you thought about them so far this season?
I think they're a team that doesn't really know. They don't have a future plan because they trade Arenado, but you don't trade Story. You also don't re-sign David Dahl, who's a guy who has high upside. So if you're going to rebuild, why not sign a guy with high upside that you have definitely more inside information than any other team does? So I'm expecting them to trade Trevor Story, but with them, I really don't know what they're thinking. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so I disagree with the intuition to trade Trevor Story, and the reason for that is he's 28, which is pretty young for a baseball player. The difference is Charlie Blackmon. I do think they need to move off Charlie Blackmon. He's been with the team for a number of years, but he's 34. And he's still a quality player, a quality hitter, and he's been a pretty good hitter for the entirety of his career. But the Colorado Rockies are one of those teams that like you said, they have no future. They're one of those kids that doesn't know where to go for college and then end up not going to college. It's weird. For them, I would keep Story and trade Blackmon, and hopefully Story they can rebuild with 2 to 3 years, and Story will be entering his early 30s, and at that point you're still a quality player. Kind of like why I didn't want the Angels shouldn't have traded Trout. And while I don't compare Story to the level of Trout, Story is definitely a very, very good shortstop, and I definitely think he should be in their future plans. But like you said, they have no future. They're really not planning for anything to happen, and they're kind of just sitting there waiting while all their players are getting older. But I feel like we can move on to number 29, which is really a surprising. It's very surprising. Minnesota Twins at 29. I definitely thought they were going to be better to start the season off, but it's really not clicked. What have you thought about them?
Yeah, I believe they were off to a really hot start in like maybe the first 10 games. Cruz, I think, was hitting a couple of homers, but they're definitely an older team. So it's definitely now, and it's a little scary when it's not clicking and it's not a young team. And you're kind of getting you should start getting a little anxiety when they're at this low in the standings right now, but they can definitely turn it around, which is a good thing of having older players. They've been through this multiple times. What do you think?
Yeah, so I 100% agree with your word. You should be scared. The Twins, like you said, are an older team, but their future is not bright. And that's not to say they can't be a great team this season, but when you have older players and players above their 40s like Nelson Cruz, the heart of your batting order is just not young. They don't have many years left. So when that's the case, you have to win now. And so when you start out the season with their record of 12 and 21, that's just not a good way to start it out. Luckily for them, and one of my favorite parts of baseball is how long the season is, 162 games. So like you said, they definitely can turn this ship around and right the course. But right now, I would be worried if I was in the front office, and it's definitely just not clicking right now for the Minnesota Twins. But we can move on to number 28 with another team that's rebuilding. A team that I think is getting better, but slowly. And they started off the season well, but right now they're just not playing the same way. And it's Detroit Tigers. What have you thought about them?
Yeah, the Tigers have Miguel Cabrera, who's definitely older, but definitely you said a rebuilding team. Even though I think they were hoping to be do much better this season than they did last season, or just not where they are right now. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so I like Nico Goodrum. He's a good young player, and I like some of these guys. Akil Badu's played okay uh for his time right now, and Miguel Cabrera is a 38-year-old player that just turned 38 earlier this season, and I don't know really what his future looks like, but I don't think it's here in the Tigers. They had a good run early in his career with the Tigers, and they uh, made it to a World Series, but right now they're just not the same team. He's struggling currently, and so is the entire offense. They went a couple of games without scoring there, and uh, it's just not working out. I anticipate them to move him this season or next season and really put this rebuild into full burners. But we can move on to number 27 with a team that just won a World Series just 2 years ago, the Washington Nationals. They traded for Josh Bell this season or just before this season, but it's not really panning out, and it's going to be interesting to see how if they can turn it around during this season. What have you thought about the Washington Nationals, Kevin?
Yeah, I think you did mention the trade for Josh Bell, but the thing I want to focus on is their starting rotation, which did so well that helped them. That was the main reason of them winning the World Series. But I think it's starting to that roster is definitely aged, or that rotation is definitely aged. So that's some trouble, and it's really the back end. Like you have some great starters in Strasburg and Scherzer, but Patrick Corbin hasn't really done a good. He hasn't done well to start, so that's why I think if they can turn around, they can definitely pick it up. But that's one thing to be scary because there are older pitchers, and not every pitcher has a long lifespan in the majors. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I 100% agree, but I'm going to go a different route for their downfall. They need to invest in a catcher. Their catcher right now, their setup is not great in the catcher position, and it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how they work this out. I believe right now, let me check, but I believe they have what's his name? Yeah, they have Jan Gomes, and he's playing okay, but they honestly need to address their catcher position as it was Kirk Kurt Suzuki was a great player for them, and Grandal played well for them during that championship run, and they're going to need some success there if they're going to be a better team this season. Um, let's move on to 26, a team that's definitely better than they were last season, where they were probably rated last. Uh, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They just traded Josh Bell away to the Nationals, and they're still a rebuilding team. They have a long way to go, but they're definitely everything's definitely looking up. What do you think about the Pirates?
Yeah, they're. I think they definitely have. You did mention Josh Bell, but I think they were just trying to gain some picks because I don't think they were thought that they were going to be able to keep Josh Bell. But one guy I think they're really hoping to develop is Cabron Hayes. So that's they have a few pieces, but they're just trying to acquire more assets. And this is definitely a small market team. So kind of like what we're seeing with the Indians. They're hoping to do what the Indians did, but when you realize that time is gone, you kind of just have to rebuild everything slowly and develop it through the draft because you can't really do it through free agency. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Brian Hayes is an amazing talent, and with the addition of their first pick this year in the draft that comes in June, I definitely think that everything's on the rise. So I anticipate them to be a much better team in the coming years. But like you said, they definitely thought that they could not keep Josh Bell under contract for much longer, so they decided to get some assets out of him. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a good thing for the Pirates as they move on from Josh Bell. They can start putting in more of their guys from the platoon into their roster, and I think by 2 or 3 years they should be edging on the playoff team. But let's move on to 25, where we have a team that made the playoffs last year. They're not doing that well right now, but they're definitely not out of it considering the division they're in, if I see division. The Miami Marlins. What have you thought about them so far?
Yeah, I kind of saw last year as like kind of a fluke because they seem to me a team that's always constantly in that rebuild, but they have Sixto Sanchez, who's a really good player. They have a lot of good pitchers, but I think they're just developing that talent, and they kind of just had a spike last year. But they definitely do have a bright future, and I believe they are hoping that they could expand on what they did last year, and that kind of they thought it was a step, but with a young team, you're going to have ups and downs. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I love the names on this team. They have Sixto Sanchez, and they have my favorite name probably in baseball right now, Jazz Chisholm. His first name is Jazz. That's just so cool. Um, I really like this team, and like you said, they're young and rebuilding, so they have, like you said, ups and downs. But I think this team's on the rise, and while this season may be a step back, I think it may be 2 steps forward next season, and I think everybody should be watching out for the upcoming years. Let's move on to 24, where we have another rebuilding team, the Kansas City Royals. They started out this season pretty hot and were leading the division, I think, at some points, but just lately they have not been doing well as they've lost 9 straight games, which is not good. What have you thought about the Royals?
Yeah, and I believe they had the best record in baseball at one point, but they're definitely a rebuilding team, and one player is that they are definitely keeping an eye on is the shortstop Bobby Witt Jr., who they selected, I believe, a year or two ago. So they're definitely hoping to get that. And they signed Mike Miner, who I think is a guy given the right he can give him the right time and the right team, he can do really well. So maybe they're hoping he kind of does when he was with the Rangers and he played really well. Maybe trade him and get more prospects, or he can be a key part of when they exit that rebuild.
Yeah. They're a team that epitomizes it epitomizes a team that's inconsistent. Like you said, they started out this year being the best team in baseball statistically speaking with record, but right now they've lost. Over the last 9 games, they've been the worst team in baseball, and that's what's going to happen when your team is rebuilding. They're going to be uh, really good at some points and really bad at some points. It's just how it works with really young players. But like you said, Mike Miner, he's a good pitcher, and I don't know if he's going to contribute to this team as much as he has with the Rangers, but it's just going to depend on the system they run, and they may trade him away, like you said, to get some assets for the future. Let's move on to a team that I really am surprised they're this low. They have so many great talent, including Trout, Rendon, Otani, and they just got rid of Pujols, the Los Angeles Angels. What do you think about them getting rid of Pujols?
Yeah, that's definitely where I was gonna start with. I think it's interesting. They he definitely didn't live up to the deal they gave him in 2012, but I'm surprised they didn't move him in a DH role, but their first baseman, I think Walsh, has done really well for them. And Pujols was just getting up in age, but I'm definitely surprised they decided to get rid of him, especially when you mentioned they have a lot of guys and they were hoping Pujols can be a huge contributor. Do you agree with that or no?
Sort of. He was definitely a better player at the beginning of his tenure, as he was an All-Star in 2015 with the Angels when he hit 40 home runs. So I don't think he was a bad player, but I understand your point. He definitely in the latter years has not been living up to the amount that he's been given each year. Um, I think this year he's given 28 million or some crazy amount, or even more than that maybe. And he's definitely not living up to whatever the amount is that they're giving him, and they're giving him 30 million. I just looked it up, which is insane. And they're still going to have to pay him that because of how the contracts work, and especially if nobody picks him up on waivers, the Angels will have to pay for that. Uh, and that's crazy to me because they thought releasing him was better than keeping them when he's worth 30 million. They thought that the contract, taking on the burden of the contract with him not playing, is better than him playing, which is tough to say the least. But this team definitely should be on the rise. As Otani's played amazing this season, and Trout's always amazing. There's not much to say there. And Rendon's getting better and more accustomed to his role. It's really their pitching that's the issue. And if they can get their pitching together besides Otani, I think they really could be the best team in the AL West. But we'll have to see what happens. The next team on our list is the Chicago Cubs, a team that won the World Series in 2015 and is just struggling to score sometimes this season. What have you thought about the Cubs?
Yeah, similar to the Rockies, even though not to the extent of the Rockies, they don't know where they're going because they send away Yu Darvish to the Padres and get some picks, but then they sign Jock Peterson, who played very well for the Dodgers this past season. I'm pretty sure, correct?
Yes.
He was what? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wasn't
Jock,
sure
Jock
if he was.
Peterson won a World Series. Yes.
Well, yeah, I know he. I was pretty sure about that, but I just wanted to double check. Thanks. And then, um, they also re-signed the pitcher, I think Kyle Hendricks, who's with the Phillies, and then he came back to the Cubs. So it's just where are you going? And then a huge decision is Chris Bryant, and they have a lot of young talent. Also Rizzo. But do you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, they're definitely a team that's in a standstill because I don't know if they're on the downside or the upside. They they're a very inconsistent team. Like they'll win a game by 6 and then lose a game by 10 and then win a game by 6 and then lose a game by 3. It's just there's no consistent success or failures, and like you said, they really don't know where they're going. I thought it was interesting that they traded Darvish when they did, and I didn't really like the move unless they think they're going to rebuild, which I really don't know if they're going to. They have quality players on their team, and I thought Javi Baez was going to take the next step this season as a hitter, as he was hitting 290 and 281 before last season when he hit 203. And this season he's only hitting 255, so he's kind of going back the wrong direction, which is not a good thing when you see a player who's only 28. What do you think about that?
Yeah, excellent about what you said with Javi Baez. It's a guy they're hoping to do well, and you said exactly what I was. I agree with what you said about you send you Darvish away and a questionable move because that kind of signals a rebuild, but then they don't. Other actions kind of go against it. But I think we can move on to the next team that we have is 21, and of course that is the Texas Rangers. The Adolis Garcia story is great, and the Rangers are definitely playing well than like what everyone thought they were going to do, but I'm kind of taking a cautionary thing. Like things are going to pass, and Joey Gallo hasn't been on a tear, but he hasn't reached his high point yet, which I think gives good sign to any potential buyers that what if this is him at his quote unquote low point, he's still very productive, and then when you have Joey just smashing balls out of the ballpark, that will really get the teams going. So I definitely think the players that the Rangers fans should care about and that I quote unquote care about are Taylor Hearn because he is a great pitcher. Um, I'm not biased because he's been on the show. Nick Solak, Dane Dunning, um, who sort of Isaiah Kinner Fluffy. He's a little bit older, but he's doing really well in the shortstop. And then Adolis Garcia, I'm not sure if he can keep it up when the league adjusts to him. But what are your thoughts on the Rangers?
Yeah, if the Rangers can keep this up, maybe they're closer to being out of the rebuild than we thought. And especially with their second pick coming up in the draft, maybe they can add on to this sooner than later. And some players can get out of the minors in 2 to 3 seasons, and maybe by then they just roll out whoever they do decide to pick in with the second pick, and he just comes in 2 to 3 years from now when the Rangers are really coming out of that rebuild, and that can really rebound them into a significant playoff run. Um, Gallo is younger than Adolis Garcia, surprisingly, and it depends on what they really want to do. It's really the contract that's the issue, and it's going to be interesting to see if, like we just said, we mentioned this before, but it's going to be interesting to see if like a team like the Cubs picks up Joey Gallo. And if that were the case, we'd really be confused about what the Cubs are doing, and we'd have no idea where they're going to move next because they just signed Jock Peterson. But uh, I've really liked what the Rangers have done, and while they do have a losing record this year, 18-20, they definitely have been better than they have been in the past 2 seasons. And I really like the additions that they've made, and I really like Nate Lowe. I don't know what you thought about him so far this year, but I thought Nate Lowe has been a quality first baseman for them, better than they've had lately. What have you thought about him?
Yeah, he's definitely been amazing. He is in one of the streaks right now. It's one of like the top streaks in the MLB. If I can find Jared Sandler's Twitter account, because he's been tweeting about it, as Nate Lowe, unless his streak got broken, Nate Lowe has reached base in 22 straight games, and then that ranks among that is the active streaks, the best active streak right now. That was as of 2 days ago, but that's one to see, and he's definitely providing competition for any first baseman they want to bring up. And then I kind of disagree. I kind of see it as it's a good high point. Teams are getting players are getting good reps, but I don't think it's going to last. And for a true championship contender, I think we need that depth, and I think that's what the Rangers are lacking right now. So I think that's why we see some good players go, and you just get more young guys. One guy though to keep an eye on is the Rangers is Josh Young, who is a third baseman, is kind of Texas Tech. He won the Big 12 Player of the Year a few years ago. Then the Rangers drafted him, but he got injured, and they said he would start working out in May. He broke his foot, so that's one thing. And then there's Davis Wenzel, who is also co-player of the year in the Big 12. So I'm hoping those guys come up. And then number 2 overall pick, if Leiter's there, I'm happy with Leiter, because I think he fits into what you were saying about a much quicker thing. But if Leiter's not there, which is seeming so, I say Jordan Lawler at number 2.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to watch out in June when that draft does come around to see who the Rangers take, and we will definitely do a review of that draft, at least the first round. But let's move on to the next team, and this team's definitely better than they were last year, the Baltimore Orioles. Um, they lost last night against the Mets in crazy fashion, where I think Mazeikis is his last name, Nick Mazeikis, I think the guy for the Mets hit a walk off RBI. Uh, and won them the game. But the Orioles have been playing well. They've been competitive this season, and I'm really surprised considering how bad they played last season. What have you thought about them so far?
Yeah, definitely surprising. I think their pitching has done really well. You have Means, and then who had a no hitter, was close to a perfect game. But I'm trying to see if you are correct about the Mets, um, and the score of who hit the walk off.
Patrick Mazika is his name. I was close, but yes, he hit a walk off. Was that last game? I think it was last game.
Yeah, I think not the last game, quote unquote, as we're recording, is today, 7-1. But I think you're talking about yesterday,
Yes, I am talking about yesterday's game. Yes.
which was 3-2, a much closer game
Yeah, that's
against
when
the
they
Mets.
walked it off. I'm pretty sure, and Mazika got the winning RBI.
So the Orioles are definitely a team who I think are trying to get out of their rebuild. And when they brought in the new regime, they definitely had a long way to go, because the Orioles had just fallen behind so many other teams. But do you have any more thoughts on them?
Not really. I just, like you said, the pitching is really improving, and I think really that's the key for any team coming out of a rebuild. Is once you get your pitching together, you can really start making the moves to getting your lineup in order for a playoff push. But I think we can move on to 19, where we have a team that has Madison Bumgarner now, and he pitched a no hitter. But it's the Arizona Diamondbacks. What have you thought about them?
Yeah, a team that I'm not really surprised by where they were. Like I thought they'd kind of be below because they just don't have. They wouldn't be really contending because of the division they're in, and they wouldn't be really competitive. But I think they're definitely kind of in the middle stage of rebuild because they did sign Bumgarner, but they did trade Granke. So I think they're hoping maybe they're in like a little higher spot and hoping for a better or greener pastures than what they've been through. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, another thing to consider is they traded Paul Goldschmidt, which really confuses me also because I don't really know what they're another team that's kind of in the oasis of I have no idea what they're doing, Bill. Uh, and because of their moves, it's been kind of confusing. I'm interested to see what they do in the future, the short term future, as I initially anticipated them to try to contend, but uh, right now it's looking like they are still much more worried about um, picking up pitchers that are past their prime. But I think we can move on to 18, where we have the Seattle Mariners, another team that's moved up this year. What have you thought about them so far?
Yeah, and they are bringing up the prospect, I believe the right fielder. So they're kind of in the rebuild stage. They're calling up Jared Kalenic on Thursday. So May 13th for anyone listening, and we're past this point. So they're kind of rebuilding, but I think the AL West is kind of weak in my opinion, especially with what the Astros are doing. I was expecting a much stronger start from them, but COVID halted it, and their feelings have gotten hurt surprisingly, or unsurprisingly to us, but surprisingly to them. So they could maybe be a dark horse for winning because they've been definitely in that rebuilding stage for a couple of years. But um, I think they're just still getting those lessons learned for the young players. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I also like what Kyle Lewis has done this year. He's been a pretty good prospect for them. That's played this season pretty well. But I really understood that they do think they're out of the rebuild or close to because they got rid of Felix Hernandez, one of their greatest pitchers in Mariners history, and they're really starting to move out of that range. They got James Paxton back after the Yankees took him for a couple of seasons or a season or two. But I definitely anticipate them to be contending for a playoff spot this year potentially. But we'll have to see what happens as the season moves along, as it is a long season.
Yeah, very true. And I think we can move on to number 17. We have the Braves. A little low if you're a Braves fan, and but they've just hit a rough patch right now. A lot of injuries. Soroka is having a setback with his Achilles. Then you have their catcher, Darnard, who's really off to a great start. He's injured. And then I believe they've had some injury concerns with Acuna. And I think Ozzy Albiz was out for a little bit. So just a little, it's not off to a great start. But as we mentioned, it's a long season. So they definitely have time. But pitching is a thing to watch out. And I definitely wouldn't be surprised, even though this is probably way too early, during the trade deadline they will try to pick up some relievers or some starters. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility, and like we said, Soroka's going to be out with some time with the exploratory surgery on his Achilles, which he hurt earlier. But this is not the team that you want injuries to your pitchers, especially ones that play well for you. And yeah, the reason why they are this low is because of injury concerns, and I don't know how long they can last with a 17 and 18 record if they do continue to have injury concerns. Acuna's played well this year in his time. Freeman is played worse than last season because he was MVP last year, but definitely not bad. But I definitely anticipate them to be a team to watch during the trade deadline, especially if they continue with these injuries, as they may make some crazy moves.
And injuries are a thing that's happened last season, because Max Fried got injured in last year in September, so that's something to keep an eye on. But I think we can move on to number 16. We have the Astros. Um, they were surprised that some teams were mad at them. Definitely are not listeners to us because we constantly give them much we give them we shame them for what they did, as the World Series still counts, which is something I believe we both disagree with. We haven't said it, now we have said it, but I'm pretty sure from what we've said, everyone can know listening. We do not approve of them still having those rings. Am I correct?
Yes, 100%.
So I'm a little surprised that they aren't starting off well, because they are, as much as I hate them, they are a very good team. They have the best rotation right now, because not because all the rotations are great in the AL West, just because they're that bad. Maybe the Rangers could make an argument, but I'm not sure that's going to be consistent. So the Astros, that's I'm just surprised they're here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely anticipated them to start off better this season, but Altuve's not the same self. The only year he won an MVP was the year he cheated, which really should put something against that MVP. But they're definitely struggling against the good teams. They lost to the Yankees a couple times in the Bronx, but they're gonna have to get out of it. As like we said, the Mariners are really pushing behind them, and if there's any slip ups by Houston, I would not be surprised if even Texas passes them, especially if it's a big fall.
Yeah, that would definitely put a smile on my face. And now at number 15, we have the Brewers. Yelich is injured, so that's something that's hurting the Brewers right now, as they're a team I think definitely hit a rough patch last year. After um, was the year before that when they lost to the Dodgers, or is that when they
The
beat
year
the Dodgers?
before,
Last year.
they lost. No, the year they lost to the Dodgers was 2018.
Okay. Well, a team that's definitely trying to get back to where they were a few years ago, because you do have Yelich, who's a young star, even though he's injured right now. So it's definitely not out for him, as we said, long season. But um, I think the Cardinals are winning that division. So it's just between them and the Cardinals, and that's why they're at second place. Because no offense to everyone else, they're kind of an iffy team right now. Um, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting story with the Brewers because they started out the season as one of the best teams in the league, but right now they're kind of cooling off, and especially because of the injury to Yelich, it's hindering their growth as a team. But you can tell when we're talking about baseball because we'll refer to a guy like Christian Yelich as young when he's 29. But then when we talk about football and we say 29, if it's not a quarterback, we're talking about tail end of his career. So it's weird how the dynamic works between sports. But going back to the Brewers, they're definitely a team that still needs to address their pitching. Corbin Burns has played amazing this year, but they need to get more back end success on their starting pitchers. Um, and they obviously need Yelich back. If they don't get him back in a timely manner, which they should soon, it's definitely going to affect what where they are if they do make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the team that I kind of called iffy was the Cincinnati Reds, who we have above the Brewers. They're just doing well right now, as in their last 10. Well, actually, not too well. It's 6-4 in their last 10, and they're just at 500. But this is a team outside of Joey Votto. I think they're young and they're kind of going through that rebuild, but I think they're kind of hoping they can get away from that rebuild, and there are greener pastures ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the Reds are definitely a team that is young and getting better. I really like their roster, and like you said, Joey Votto's their only really quote unquote old head that you can say that's on the roster. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the future. As I think they should be coming out of their rebuild as they weren't the best team. I know they did make the NL wild card last year, I believe, is the second to last seed, the seventh seed. But they've really been rebuilding recently. As the last time they made the playoffs before them, well, I think 2013. You can check on me with that, but I think it was 2013. And the Reds this year are just they're getting better. Joey Votto is definitely not playing like he used to, but he's playing good. I really like Tucker Barnhart, I think. Their catcher, he's played well this year, and so has Jesse Winker, their left fielder. He's played sensationally, and Nick Castellanos, somebody familiar to Kevin, is also playing well. But we'll have to find out what happens with this team as they're really a wild card.
Also, Nick Castellanos is the one that got suspended for flexing at the plate. Showing emotion in baseball is terrible and should never be in the game. That is what Rob Manfred, I think, would say and agree with those words, even though I disagree with him. But also, I'm double checking on what you said. I think you said the last time they made playoffs was 2013.
Yes, before last season, the last time they made the playoffs was 2013. Is what I said.
All right, let me check. I'm pulling it up right now. I think you would be right. 2013 is that may have been when they faced the Pirates. Um, just having trouble right now finding their record. Um, this is so weird. Usually, I'm looking at Wikipedia. They should show me.
Just go to Baseball Reference. I think
Oh,
that would show
baseball.
it better. Yeah.
All right, let's see what Baseball Reference has to say. While I'm doing that, we can move to the next team. After the Reds is the Dodgers at 13. Dodgers fans probably upset with us right now, but I'll let you explain that while I check out Baseball Reference.
Yeah, so the reason why we have the Dodgers here is injuries to Justin Turner and them not playing well recently, as they're 3-7 in their last 10, and I think they're 1-6 in their last 7 or something close to that. They just have to get everything back together. Their injuries are not helping them, and Cody Bellinger I also think is out, so it's going to be a while before they get their whole unit back together. But that's essential for them being a top 10 team in this league, as they're not so good that they can be completely injured and be a premier team in this league. Uh, what are your thoughts about them? Did you find it or?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. They actually, yes, it was 2013 when they lost in the wild card round. So you are correct there. Excluding 2020, of course.
Yeah, yes.
2020 last, but that was a weird year.
Yeah,
So
they were the 7 seed when they normally wouldn't have made it. So yeah, we'll have to see. But what are your thoughts about the Dodgers?
yeah, the Dodgers. This is a team who I was very high on last year. Very high on them still. Saying no one could beat them if healthy. So injuries have been a cause for concern. Cody Bellinger out. Dustin May. That's difficult because he's a good player and he was definitely on fire until his injury. But they have the rotation. But they have struggled against the Padres, which is something that surprised me early on. There were definitely more games, but maybe showing that Padres do have a better chance of them. But they're a team I definitely see going back to the World Series. But right now, just having a tough time dealing with the injuries, and I also believe Turner is injured. So a lot of injuries to a lot of their key players. Any thoughts on that?
No, I hold the same sentiments. They're definitely going to need to be healthy, for them to make it, further. Well, not further than they did last season because you can't, but to do better than they're currently doing right now.
And now moving to 12, we talk the team that we have is Tampa Bay Rays, who of course faced the Dodgers in the World Series last year. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so the Rays are getting, or also the injury bug is also sort of hitting them. They started out the season better, than they're playing right now, but they're still 6-4 in their last 10 and are playing, well to say the least. I definitely anticipate them. I anticipated them to be worse than they are right now, especially after losing Blake Snell. But that's true. That's proven not to be entirely the truth. They are 19-18 and are looking to be better than I anticipated. But what do you think about them?
Yeah, they're a team. They didn't necessarily quote unquote they're rebuilding again. They're kind of doing what made them great and made them had such a great run to the playoffs last year, which is selling high on their players. They traded away Blake Snell, which is a questionable decision in my opinion. But their team that is kind of hoping they have a lot of young guys. They also traded Nate Lowe, which is a thing. That's another intriguing trade they made. But they're definitely hoping they can get some good the continue play of what they had last year from Tyler Glass now and other players. But it's tough because they have a tough division, in my opinion, in the AL East. with the Yankees. Blue Jays, I kind of hold in high regard, and then the Red Sox are making a surprising. Um, they're surprisingly playing very well. We'll get to them later. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the AL East right now is looking like the best division in baseball, but we'll have to see if that holds out through the entirety of the season. Another team that's another division that considering that you can consider for that is also the NL West, as the Giants, Padres, and Dodgers are all contending for that number one seed in that division. But the Rays, I mean, it's just they're in a tough spot, and the next team we're going to talk about is also in that situation, and I think we can move on to them now, right?
Yes, I said their name just a few moments ago, and that is number 11, Blue Jays. They're a team who signed a lot of good players, and showed some big swings from them. That is Marcus Simeon and then George Springer, both players that played for AL West teams. So, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so I really liked the success that Vlad Guerrero's had this year. I thought he played outstanding, and this name always gets me. Ryu. I'm just gonna say Ryu. I don't really know how to say his name to the best of my ability, but he's also played well, from what I understand. And they're a young team. They're a team that's getting better as times go along, but it's gonna be a minute before they're the best team in the AL East, in my opinion. What do you thought about them?
Yeah, there's also Bo Bichette, who's the shortstop, and he kind of alternates between Simeon. Sometimes we've seen Simeon play second base, I think most of the time, and then Bichette's played shortstop or third, if I'm correct. So some young players, but adding in that veteran leadership, like Springer, who came from a young team that made who were very good and then cheated to win a World Series in the Astros. So those are just some things to watch, but it's gonna be tough in this division. So they're just gonna have to play hard. But the pitcher you mentioned, because I also don't want to butcher his name, it was a good pickup last season, the season before last season. But I think we can move on to number 10, which is the San Diego Padres, a team that was once bright and sort of young, but they've made a lot of pushes to get into the contending conversation. We've talked about this before, but Tatis is a concerning player to me because of the money you gave him, and he is out once again for COVID. But their pitching is sometimes does well, but also doesn't do well sometimes. So that's something to keep an eye on. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so the Padres are an interesting team because they make all these moves for the Darvish, Snell, and you really think they're supposed to be one of the best teams in the league, and right now they're still not leading their divisions because of injuries. Injuries have really derailed a lot of teams this year, especially at the beginning of the season. But the concerns with Tatis, I know this is just COVID right now, but it's really becoming serious because he's not playing as many games as he should, which is really a concern, especially from my take, from my point of view. I've really liked what Eric Hosmer's done this season. He's been probably their best hitter all year. Tatis has hit 9 homers, but he's only batting 240, and Machado's not playing as he used to, which is really sad to see. Musgrove has also pitched very well, and I'm really impressed by his ability this year. And I thought Blake Snell was going to pitch better to start the year, but I bet he's just adjusting to his new system and new pitching coach. What have you thought about them?
Yeah, very true. Of course, you had to mention Musgrove as he threw the first ever no hitter in Padres history against my team, the Rangers. So thank you again, Austin, for causing nightmares. Expanding your roles, though, you did it in NFL. You do it in NFL multiple times, even though it's kind of easy when you're talking about the Cowboys. But you're expanding your roles here in the MLB episode. But Padres, I'm definitely worried about the pitching. Um, Even though you do make a lot of moves, bullpen is a factor. And then their team, I see trading for Joey Gallo. There is a connection between the Rangers front office. So I think that's why you see so many former Rangers players on the Padres. You have Keanu Kella, Jurickson Profar, the once bright young star, and then Yu Darvish, of course. But I think we can move on to the next team, and that is the Oakland Athletics, who have a former Ranger that they traded for, Elvis Andrews. They had a slow start, and we said they weren't going to do well, but pitching is still a concern for them in my eyes, as they did trade for Mike Minor, but then they let him go. It is good. They are also hoping to get some nice comebacks from their corner players on the diamond, Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, so they're a team that I did not anticipate to have this hot of a start, especially after they started, I think, 0-6 this season. But they've really done well lately, and that's why we have them up so high. It's who could play well now, and I've really been impressed by their ability to win close games. They've had a lot of close games this year where they have just pulled it out. Um, and that's really what you need to do in the playoffs. There can be a lot of close games, especially between good teams, as they won last night 3-2 against the Red Sox. So it should be a good competition in the AL West, and I'm excited to see who does take the AL West crown.
Yeah, it would definitely be a nice competition, and we may have to start. The Oakland Athletics days may be numbered from that show. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're just bluffing so they can get more money. Oh, we've seen a lot of teams do that, but I think we can move on to number 8. We have the Philadelphia Phillies, who are a team that we had not the first time we ever did it was World Series or bust. That was the Phillies, because they've made a lot of moves. They bring back JT Realmuto. You have Bryce Harper. You have McCutchen. You also have the shortstop that used to be a Yankee. I'm going to let you say his name.
Oh, Didi.
Yeah, Didi Gregorius.
Yeah, Didi Gregorius. They also had the manager Joe Girardi. Another player that's on their bench that they play is Ronald Torres, who's also on the Yankees. They have a lot of Yankees on the team. They also have Andrew McCutchen, who's also a former Yankee. They just took all the Yankees. But I'm not the happiest about it. I like Didi. I thought he was an outstanding player, and him being on the Yankees right now would help us with our issue, and we wouldn't have to have the Odor problem, as Odor is injured, and then so we don't really have a second baseman, as we're scrambling to put people in, because we're having to play DJ LeMahieu at first because Voigt's still hurt, and then Voigt comes back, and it's just crazy. We'll get to the Yankees when we get to the Yankees, but we're winning games, so that's what matters. But the Phillies are also doing well as of late. They lost a very controversial game against the Mets recently, and they're 19-17. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and while they don't score as many runs as some teams do, they only have allowed 155 this year, which is I would say less than average. Uh, and I definitely anticipate them to be a playoff team, and I'd be very surprised if they weren't. What else do you have on them?
Yeah, Aaron Nola has been doing really well. He plays well for them some nights. I'm thinking of Eflin, the pitcher. He played really well one night, and then he kind of had a really off night in his next start. Um, so that's just something to keep watch, because their starting rotation this season has shown a potential to do really well, and then they show a potential not to do well. As I was mentioning, Eflin, I'll double check that I'm thinking of the right guy. Yeah, Zach Eflin is the guy who I was thinking about. I think he struggled against the Mets, but after he dominated the Mets in one start. But I think we can move on to the next team. That, of course, is the Boston Red Sox, who I will make sure to have this intro is Austin claims that they would not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to stand by that. They started out this season as the worst team in the AL East, and right now they do have the best record. I still do not believe they're a top three team in this division, but they're proving me wrong so far. And there's a long season to prove one of us wrong or right. And I would say I wish the best for the Red Sox, but as a Yankees fan, that's really hard for me to do. So I'm just gonna say good luck, and it's gonna be a good ride. I definitely anticipate the Yankees to win the AL East, and I'd be absolutely astonished if the Yankees did not. But the Red Sox right now are playing very well. Their pitching is kind of an issue, and it's going to be interesting to see how they address that as the season prolongs. Uh, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see them either rise a lot or fall a lot. They're a team that's very inconsistent, as they either have really high highs or really low lows, and we're gonna have to see what happens. As right now, JD Martinez is playing as one of the best players of baseball, and Devers is also hitting well, and Bogarts. But I just don't know if those are possible to keep up, and their pitching is just not as good as some other teams in the division. Pavetta's won all of his games, but still has a 3.19 ERA. He's the lowest ERA of all their starters, and he's only won below 3.8. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But right now we have them here at 7.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. Agreed with you. I think when you made that statement, they didn't have a high chance as their team that I really saw them doing a rebuild, but because they traded away Betts and Price, just for some picks. I know one of them was Jeter Downs. 99% sure about that. So definitely looks towards the future, but JD Martinez, as you said, playing great right now, but may not be a good sign. Might not be a sign of future success this season, but just for future success in the next few years. I think we can move on to the next team, which would be the Cleveland Indians, who I said they were kind of entering rebuild in this episode. I definitely said it in other episodes. If not, I'd be very surprised because they traded away a lot of their good players. Corey Kluber, um, oh
Lindor.
my gosh, Lindor.
Lindor.
Yeah, lost Carlos Santana. I believe to the Royals. So that's they're definitely looking for the rebuild, but they're off to a hot start. This could show just how great their farm system is, as they're a team that has to rely on their farm system. As I mentioned, they're a small market team. But what are your thoughts on them?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I've probably also said they were a rebuilding team, as like you said, they traded a lot of their quality players away, but they still have Ramirez, they still have Shane Bieber, they still have pretty good players on their team, and they definitely can make a run. I wouldn't be surprised if the Indians are a team that goes all out this year, as they really have nothing to lose. Many people like us did not have a lot of high expectations for them this season, and when you're playing as a team with a chip on your shoulder to prove everybody wrong, it kind of can make the best out of a worse situation. But I feel like we can move on to number 5, where we have the Chicago White Sox, a team that's just been on a tear as of late, and I'm really interested to see what you thought about them.
Yeah, their team, their pitching has been on fire, and when you go out and get Lance Lynn, also Carlos Rodon is the guy who came really close, I believe, to the perfect game this season. So that's another pitcher just on the back end. But to me, those top two starters are Lucas Gaelito and Lance Lynn. And that's what really propels teams winning. We talked about it so much when we talk baseball. Pitching is a huge thing. And they're definitely looking to come out of that. They are coming out of that rebuild, which is signaled by what they did with the White Sox, and definitely trying to repeat their entrance into the playoffs, but hopefully go a little bit farther because they lost to the Athletics, I'm pretty sure, in 3 games in the wild card. I'll double check that while you give your thoughts.
Yeah, so the White Sox are a team that is just like you said on fire pitching right now. Um, they're a team that I saw we all saw I think on the rise, as last season they did lose in 3. I don't believe it was to the Athletics though, as the
It
Athletics
was to
lost.
the Athletics.
It lost to the Athletics. I thought the Athletics lost to Houston.
No, Athletics beat them in the wild card, and then they
Oh,
faced
oh, oh,
Houston.
oh, oh, oh. Yeah, everything's confusing because last year was weird. Um, but yes, the White Sox are just a hot pitching team. Their top 3 pitching right now have just been insane ERA wise. Um, and it's crazy because you have Lance Lynn, who's a 1.52 ERA, and Carlos Rodon, who has a .58 ERA. And then they have probably their third guy, Dylan Cease, who is a 2.80 ERA, and then Dallas Keuchel and Lucas Giolito are having their worst ERAs, and they're people that have already won. Well, Giolito hasn't won a Cy Young. I know Keuchel's won a Cy Young, and Giolito's an exceptional player. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is the best pitching core, starting pitching core in the MLB by the end of the season if all of them can get it going. And that's a really scary sight to see. As we know that pitchers are really what makes the playoffs or can win playoff games and win World Series, as we saw with the Nationals. What do you think?
Yeah, and to your point, last year was weird. I don't think they would have made it. They were second in the AL Central, but as last year worked, it was first and second team in the division get into the playoffs. So I'm not sure if they made it. But as you mentioned, I forgot about Keuchel. He slipped my mind. He's still playing, and that's a good thing for the White Sox. So I think we can move on to the next team, which is number 4, the Mets, where they were the people that Francisco Lindor. They traded for Francisco Lindor. So um, Francisco Lindor hasn't done as well as I think people would have thought when they traded him, but it's just taken time getting used to New York and a team and a fan base who I guess expects hopes for is the better thing because Mets haven't had a good track record lately, but hopes for much more promise than what people in Cleveland thought when rooting for the Indians. So, but some other good plays as it is a really tough division, but they're playing well, and that's why we have them at number 4. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the Mets are a team that they have a better track record than I would say a majority of the teams. They made the World Series in 2000, they made the World Series in 2015, and they had definitely more success than the Indians, who had made the World Series since the 90s before that. But like you said, it is a big market, and they do anticipate some success coming with a team that has so much talent on it, and especially with Jacob DeGrom, who's won back-to-back Cy Youngs and is pitching out of his mind right now. But the Mets have won 7 straight games, including the game today against the Orioles, which they won 7-1. And so they're just a team on a tear that I believe could really almost beat any team uh, right now, especially if it was in uh, City Field or on City Field.
One thing you mentioned, DeGrom, he just entered, I think, the 10-day IL, which is something a little should cause a little bit of anxiety as this is kind of a frequent thing for him. But when he is on the field, he is absolutely incredible, and he is aging like fine wine with his pitching as the velocity just continues to increase instead of decrease. But I think we can move on to a team just a few miles from the Mets Stadium. That, of course, is New York Yankees and your team. Garrett Cole, of course, doing well. The offense doing well, but you said they've gotten hit by the injury bug, as you've talked about a few minutes ago. And I'm saying you have a problem with Odor. That's shocking.
Oh yeah, I mean, Odor's injury hurts. It was a fluke injury, and we need him back, especially if Voigt's going to be out and in and out because of his surgery that he had during the offseason. But I really like our team. Garrett Cole's pitching out of his mind, and we just need to get everything together. Stanton is hitting the ball better than he has ever in a Yankee uniform since the Rays series last year. Judge needs to get back to his full form. Gary Sanchez hit a homer last night, and DJ LeMahieu is getting back into his MVP almost level form. And so I definitely anticipate this team to be one of the best teams in the AL. And right now they're our highest rated AL team. So you ready to name number 2?
Yes, at number 2, we have the San Francisco Giants. Definitely unexpected just this high because they've been in a rebuild. They kind of entered a rebuild when they let Madison Bumgarner go. But they have a lot of older guys. Posey, who opted out of last season, then Brandon Belt, playing really well. And that's just a good sign, combination of old and younger guys. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I don't know really what to say. The Giants were not a team I definitely anticipated to be this high. You can check right now, but I don't think either of us had them in our top 3 in the NL West division. You can go back on the doc
Yeah,
and
I
see
would
what
not be
happened.
shocked by that. I'm checking. I had them in the bottom. I had them just above the Rockies, but that's not saying much.
And
And
then,
then you had them in the same spot as me, just above the Rockies, under the Diamondbacks for both of
yeah,
us. So you're correct.
yeah, I don't know if they can keep it up. Buster Posey's having his best season in years, ever since he won the MVP basically in 2012, I believe he won the MVP. But he's batting out of his mind. I think he's batting around mid 380s, 385 or something like that. And it's really impressive considering how uh, old he is. Uh, he is another player aging like fine wine. He's in his I think he's 34 or something like that, and it's really impressive to see how this team's coming together. Another guy that's really playing well is Donovan Solano. I know he's on the 10-day IL, but he's a young guy, or not a young guy. He's 33, but he's playing very well. And this team's pretty old. All their starters are really in their 30s, uh, including Yastrzemski, who's playing better. But it's going to be interesting as this is a team of old guys that may be trying to, for one last time, get a ring. As we all know that they won 3 championships: 2010, 2012, and 2014 during the 2010s, including against I think a team
Why'd
called
you
the
have to name
Rangers.
them? Like, seriously? Like,
It,
thanks, man.
it's okay, but maybe they're trying to get another, and they're definitely rebuilding faster than the Rangers, and they also beat the Rangers. So I mean that's how
Damn.
it works.
3 shots in like 30 seconds. Damn. Thought we had built like some protective armor. You were correct about 2012. He was the NL MVP and he is 34. Do you want to guess the date of birth for him?
Oh, there's no way. April 18th, sure.
Oh, close. March 27th.
Oh, okay. I knew it was in spring because I heard that he had it before during spring training, so I just guessed the spring training date, but I didn't know the
Gotcha.
date.
You're close. It's okay. You failed. That's what you get for hammering the Rangers in 30 seconds. But now we can announce number 1, which is the Cardinals. And great. I say hammering the Rangers and I have to say the Cardinals name. So, what are your thoughts?
Both teams that beat the Rangers are rebuilding faster than the Rangers. Uh,
Damn.
it's okay, but Nelson Cruz. And then I mean we were talking about the Rockies earlier. They're last place. Nolan Arenado went from the worst team to the best team, and his defense is really showing. His ability to hit along with his defensive side is just an insane combination. Nolan Arenado is quite possibly the best defensive third baseman uh, in the league. He's every year he's been in the league, he has won a Gold Glove, which is absolutely insane. Uh, I know that to be facts, by the way. You don't even have to search it up. But he's definitely a player that I see aiding this St. Louis team into the playoffs, and they're definitely contenders this year. As I wouldn't be surprised if they could take down the Dodgers or whoever is that top seed, or if they're the top seed taking down whoever is that second seed. And I'd be worried if I was any other team in the league if I had to face the Cardinals today.
Yeah, you mentioned Nolan Arenado trade. I was searching up their pitcher, Flaherty, Jack Flaherty, as he's a really good bright spot for them, and he has been for the past couple of years. So that's a thing to watch on. But they also traded for Goldschmidt, as you mentioned earlier. Not at the same time, a few years earlier, but their cornerstones on the diamond, Arenado and Schmidt, were through trades. So they're definitely pushing for it as it is right now. So they definitely are a scary team, as I can mention just 10 years ago. They are still a scary team. But I believe that concludes our episode. Thank you for joining us for our first ever MLB Power Rankings. Now we will be doing an NHL playoff preview as the playoffs start even before the regular season ends for the NHL this upcoming Saturday between the Boston Bruins and the Capitals. So make sure to check that out. Also, make sure to check out our interviews as we've had some the past couple of weeks with Coach Mike Grimes and Jeff Allen. So make sure to check that out and make sure to check out our last episode. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.